Hey yo, let's go. You know what it is? Another week of that Smoke Mare show. I'm Mike Rennie. With me as always, the lovely Mary. How's it going?
It's going really good. We're getting into some really nice fall weather and more importantly, more fall racing. So
Right. Plenty of racing coming together for the Breeders' Cups. Races starting to formulate. Horses deciding if they're coming or going. So in the next couple of weeks, we're going to find out some pretty cool stuff about that. And we also got a great show dialed in today. We welcome the one and only Acacia Clement. Great interview with her. Appreciate them taking her taking the time to come on with us. Cool interview. Want to go over the Queen Elizabeth II Grade 1 Challenge Cup at Keeneland. Talk about that a little bit. Got some good racing. Play of the day, horse of the week. Maybe 3 weeks in a row for my horse of our play of the day. Can we get three in a row? Maybe a real streak. But let's get into this Queen Elizabeth, huh, Mary?
yeah, I think we have a pretty interesting race. It's a pretty small field, which
Yeah,
it
seven
is what it
horses.
is. 7 horses. It's better than the 4 horse fields that we have seen in the last year.
Right. Yeah.
And even more. I am going with a bit of a long shot here. I keep trying to look for some value on these
Yeah.
races that we've been looking at. Last week it didn't pan out the way that I wanted it, but
Yeah. It
this
was
week
a tough race.
I really like this horse, and it's California Angel. It's the one horse. I'm I'm really just hoping this horse has what it takes. She went 6 months off a layoff for the summer, went from a fairground start in March, and then started at Kentucky Downs in September. She did win just a year ago, and in a Breeders' Cup win and you're in for the turf juvenile fillies. And I think she likes the track. I'm hoping she likes the track
Yeah.
because she would be my pick.
Yeah, no, and we were kind of talking a little bit about that. The horses had a layoff, had a couple tough races in between, but it gets back to the course it won on last. Sometimes that's just what it is. A horse travels around, it gets back to its comfort zone for whatever reason, and now you get that value on that horse. If you like the horse before, you got to kind of stick with them once they get back to their. I think you still always give them a chance on their the track they won last if they were traveling around and off a layoff, and it won this time of the year. So maybe it likes that kind of fall, transition weather. Some horses like it hot, some like it cold. I totally think that's real. So Mary's going with a little bit of price there. We got the one there for Mary, which will be dangerous. I think the 6, McClellic, just is obvious going to take the money. You got Chad, you got Ortiz. The horses showed the best, but I think it's naturally just going to get that betting favorite, which I don't think it's that good. And the other Chad, you got Gina Romanica, which Mary and I talked about. Switch services a little bit. We're just not fans of the other Chad. And, he has 2 in it, of course, so you always got to worry which one will fire or not. I usually like to go with the longer of the 2 with the Chads. And it's been, at Saratoga was always the longer, not always, but 5% of the time the other Chad won. But which I think made an opportunity for other horses. So I landed on the 4, New Year's Eve. Hey, New Year's Eve, we all love that day. I know I do. Tyler and Walsh, beaten favorite, hasn't, similar to Mary's horse. My horse hasn't, the 4 hasn't won since May, and it was at Churchill. Went around the summer a little bit. Now it gets back to the Kentucky area, and I think it could sit the trip. It was 5 wide last time out, and I think this time it'll get a little better of a trip there at the 4 spot, and there's just a smaller field. So yeah, let's go with that 4 for me. And our play is we're gonna box these 3 up. Last week didn't go well. Let's try this exacta again. 1, 4, 6 exacta, box them. See what happens. Maybe get 2 prices, or we got at least a split up there, price and the favorite. So yeah, what do you think, Mary? We getting that home this week, right?
Yes, and hopefully with the prices on top.
Right, let's do it. I think it's going to be a really competitive race. I like the shorter field. I think it makes it an easier chance for a long shot. So let's get one home.
Yeah, I think also another thing to keep in mind is Mike and I will update, on Saturday morning if things change. I do know Keeneland is going to get some rain, so we're hoping that this race does stay on the turf. But if it doesn't, we will update our picks if they change based on the track conditions.
Exactly. We'll do that for you. Hopefully, let's stay dry or just a little soft at least, So, hey, let's hop right into this now. We had a great time welcoming Acacia to the show. She was so awesome. And she talked about just so many different backgrounds where she's involved in racing and deciding if she wanted to do racing or not, because she had other options. So, great interview here. And let's cue that up now. We welcome Acacia Clement to the show.
Yes, we actually had the Naira exacta here. We had the big A last week and what Anthony affectionately calls the little A. And
so
Acacia
cool.
is going to talk in this interview about how they too have a history dating back to before Naira and everything, which I honestly didn't know about before it happened. So here she is.
Good stuff. And we are back. With us this week, we got Naira's own. See her on America's Day at the races every week, all over the Naira circuit. Acacia Clement, thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we are excited. I'm a fan for some years now. I've been following you from the Gulfstream. I'm a Gulfstream homer. So back when I think when you were kind of first getting rolling, I've been following you since then and love to see where you're at now. It's good stuff. You're good for horse racing, that's for sure.
Thank you. That's kind of you to say. Appreciate it.
And we just had your husband on a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
He's awesome.
We're like, that was great. And we won, the team to come on. So you and him and wonderful. And we got to see a lot of his experiences from traveling around the world and training. But with you, it's a different side. And it's honestly a really interesting side of horse racing where you are a handicapper, but then you're also a paddock analyst. And I mean, just learning about that is super interesting, I think, to us, because when you handicap, you're looking at forms. I know you were looking at daily racing forms before this, but in the paddock, you're not looking at those forms. You're going based on whatever you physically see. Can you talk about how you prepare for both those things, if it's different?
For sure. It definitely is a different type of preparation. I think that all of the elements come into it. So, if I, right now, my schedule is where at Belmont at the Big A is that I usually host the early show. So I'm on the desk and then I go back out into the paddock for the late pick 3 or the late double. So I'm doing both. And then I'm in Saratoga. I'm pretty much exclusively in the paddock. Maggie Wolfendale and I split the shifts throughout the summer. And then it's a little bit different in the spring and the fall where I'm kind of back more anchoring the show, which is a different type of preparation as well. But if I'm ever filling in like on Talking Horses or doing picks or what I was doing at Gulfstream where I'd have to do daily picks, I still think that the physical notes always come into play. And it's something that I do rely on more for handicapping. If it's something like I wrote down, I don't like this horse going this distance, I think he's built more like a sprinter, and then he's entered in a sprint race, in the next start, those are things that are going to kind of play into the picks that I use. And then when I'm in the paddock, I try to really go into it with an open mind. I try not to do picks beforehand. I watch every replay. I look up the pedigrees. I obviously keep all of my notes from race to race in my DRF account. So I'm able to kind of look more than anything as far as changes that I might see with a particular horse. So I think that those are the things that you come into play with as when you're kind of handicapping and doing daily picks. It's tougher because you're doing things ahead of time. Whereas when you're in the paddock, I try to really keep an open mind and see what the horse is telling me at that time.
Yeah, definitely. And it's very difficult to do what you're saying, to not look at a form and just look at a horse and try to make a decision, especially at somewhere in Saratoga, where to me, I went for the first time, they just all look so perfect in person, like they get them all dialed in for Saratoga compared to others. Do you feel Saratoga's a little harder in the paddock because they all have them so groomed and prepped for Saratoga rather than maybe a different track where you can kind of, it's just not as glamorified?
I actually prefer being at Saratoga because for instance, my husband Miguel, he's on the Oklahoma training track I'll be out most mornings. So I've seen, at least on the Oklahoma side, I really don't see much that happens on the main track, but I see a lot of horses just around the barn and training in neighboring barns and things like that. So horses from Todd, from Belmont, Shug McGahee, Chad, you know, I kind of get familiar with them a little bit in the mornings. And then XBTV is an amazing resource, especially for the maiden races. And I really rely on a lot on that and watching workouts coming into it. I do look at the Clocker report, but I prefer having the opportunity to see them myself. So I think that there's just a lot more that's right there in kind of that one congregated location when you're in Saratoga. So there's a familiarity with horses that are on the grounds and coming into those races. And then especially as we get a little bit deeper into the meet, you know, what trends, everybody's following it so closely. And you see horses that race 2-3 times during the now 8-week meet, you really get to be very familiar with them. And you are familiar with the horses that are here at Belmont or at Aqueduct as well. But I think it's just so much more, as you said, people are really pointing to that. So there's a lot more access to the trainers. There's a lot more with the owners that are here. There's a lot more visibility with how the horses are training. So it is harder because there's more information, but also to me, I think it's a little bit easier to be really dialed in and feel like you are really well familiar with what you're looking at.
Yeah. Agree on that. I love like you said, the Saratoga, like you said, it's so compact. Nothing I'm used to seeing. Like you said, you kind of just walk around, you get familiarized with everyone. So that makes sense for sure on helping them out with that. And then backtrack a little bit. I know you from Gulfstream, kind of where you started off. Is that where you started off? Was the Gulfstream your first kind of on-air ticket into it, or did you do something prior to that I wasn't known about for doing on-air personality type stuff for horse racing side?
No, I worked for Horse Racing Radio Network for about a year before I started at Gulfstream.
Okay.
I started out kind of freelancing with them and doing some of the bigger days, Saturdays at Saratoga. And then I started full-time when I finished college, which was in December of 2015. And then I worked actually alongside Anthony Spiel, who's my colleague now at Nairo, which is really cool. So Anthony and I did a weekday radio show together covering racing around the country, really. But particularly it was New York and Florida, but we'd usually have 2 or 3 tracks on the show. And I really kind of honed a lot of handicapping skills there. And then from there, I was hired by Gulfstream and started in May of 2016 at Gulfstream.
Love it. Love the Gulfstream. I'm a homer. You and Jason blew it. Always, I loved it every day. That was my morning routine back in those 16 through about 18 there.
Yeah,
now,
appreciate it.
A couple of months ago, you put something on your Instagram story, like asking questions. And I actually asked you a question that you responded to, and it had to do with how you have dealt with any misogyny or how you've kind of raised above that stuff. And I think there's a ton of young girls in racing right now that see you and Maggie and Caitlin Free and all of these people in racing as such role models, and just kind of understanding how you got there and how you have kind of climbed through any hurdles or whatever with your male counterparts.
I think that there are always hurdles. I think that there always are going to be for anybody. So for my personal experience, I did not come from a racing family. I had no association or attachment to the game. I didn't really kind of have anybody to make a phone call for me. So that was tough at the beginning, and I didn't even realize it, I think, at the very start. And then as I started to get into the game a little bit, I was like, wow, I'm really, behind the 8 ball, truly, because everybody else has been in this game for their entire lives. So I think that nepotism is prevalent in the game, but as you start to become a little bit more entrenched in it, you realize it's because it's been in families for generations. And that's one of the cool things about it, is that people in their family do continue on in racing. I think that the other thing is that yes, it is stereotypically an older wealthy white male dominated sport. And I was coming in fresh off of being Miss Connecticut, and I started at Gulfstream in 2016, and I had just a year prior passed on my title, finished my year as Miss Connecticut, and finished college. And so I was young. I was 23, and I moved to South Florida in May, which was really a very big culture shock after living in New York City. And
Right.
and I never forget my first week there. Somebody came up to me, and they meant it as a compliment, but they said, you're pretty good for a beauty queen. I was like, wow. Okay, I didn't know that that meant that I wasn't going to be good at my job. They hired me for a reason. So I felt particularly at the beginning, there were a lot of backhanded compliments, and
Yeah. I bet.
it was just, you were hired because you're a beauty queen and you look good
Or,
on TV, and that was it. And I felt I was really hard on myself. Like I felt like I had to pick every single winner, and I had to always be on top of things. And I wasn't able to really kind of give myself grace in the process, because I'd come from a show horse background, and I knew horses, and yet I wasn't as familiar with the racing jargon. And so I was kind of learning a little bit as I went too. And so when I was on Horse Racing Radio Network, I was actually thankful to start that way, because what I said really mattered. It
yeah.
wasn't, just my pageant background had no influence on being on radio.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
and I was really grateful that I had a lot of people that took a chance on me and stood up for me. Mike Penna and HRN, sitting next to Anthony Spiel, he helped me a lot. And then Dave Joseph hired me at Gulfstream after hearing me MC a brunch for a charity event. So they really kind of took a shot on me, and I was grateful for that. So I think, yes, you do have to prove yourself time and time again. I still feel that way some days, and I'm just kind of
Yeah.
like, "Gee, I have to work 10 times harder than any of the guys just because I have to prove myself." But I think that I do think that racing actually is a little bit more of an open-minded sport than people give it credit for. And I think that we have kind of changed and adapted to say, listen, we need new people in the game. We need to
Yeah.
give people a chance. And I think the biggest piece of that, and the long-winded answer to your question, is that finding a good mentor and finding somebody that's
Yeah.
going to really help you along the way, and stand up for you, open doors for you as needed, is such a huge piece of it. And I think it also kind of helps, for better or for worse, it helps kind of with your credibility with others if there's somebody that's willing to vouch for you. And I was very thankful to find that early on.
Yeah, no, that definitely means a lot. Like you said, moving forward, the right people vouching for you is definitely key in moving up. And it is what it is. Yes, you are a beautiful face, but you also know your stuff. You came from horse racing. You're sharp. Like the Big A said the other day, you're a sponge. You pick up quick, and you're always going. So it's good stuff. We're glad that they hired you on the spot. We like
Thank
to
you.
see it, and so it's good stuff for racing, that's for sure. Like I like it. I have zero connections in horse racing. Like I'm, out here in Portland, Oregon, I know no one into it. So I'm just trying to nickel and dime my way into it. So I get what you're saying there. And then something else I know that's close to your heart and your family's heart. You guys own Racing for a Home, correct? Is that your mom or your family business?
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll give us a little bit of background on that, on how long it's been going. And just some goals maybe going forward here. I'm all about something I'm doing right now is something to just help save horses from slaughter and stuff. It means a lot to me.
I love that. And thank you for doing that too. It's a huge piece of my life. So Racing for Home is a 501c3 organization. We're accredited by the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. And anybody that's been involved with the TAA in any capacity knows that they hold their aftercare organizations to incredibly high standards. So when we got accreditation a few years ago, it was one of the big goals and something I'm incredibly proud of. We currently have 12 horses in the program. 2 we recently took through Caribbean Thoroughbred Aftercare from Puerto Rico, Fish Trap Road, who actually won the Dwyer and was a successful New York bred on the NYRA circuit. And then a horse named Mintz, who Centennial Farm owned at the beginning, also started at NYRA, was claimed and ended up in Puerto Rico as well. Was not as successful on the racetrack, but had a lot of starts too. And both of these horses were in pretty tough shape when we got them. And so our model through Racing for Home is that we're going to be on the smaller side. We are very hands-on. My mom is there at the barns every day. I do all the administrative side of things. My dad is a huge piece of it as well. We have wonderful volunteers in Connecticut that make it possible. And we take a lot of horses that are either not able to be adopted at the time or that other organizations won't take because they can't adopt them out right away because they either have injuries or need mental letdown. So it's definitely not a money-making organization. And the horses are with us for a long time, but it's a labor of love and something that we're incredibly proud of. Horses have given me the world and, you know, gave me a great job, introduced me to my husband. And it's, I think, our responsibility, everybody in the industry, if you're associated even just a little bit, or it is your life, to continue to give back to our equine athletes that make the sport possible.
Right. And what does it mean to you to do that with your parents? I mean, that feels like a bond beyond family bonding at that point.
Oh, that's so true. And I'm incredibly proud in particular of my mom because she is hands-on with all of the horses that are in the program. And I'm really thankful that my parents supported my dream right from the beginning and said, you know, if you want to help and you want to do this in some way, do it right, you know, start a nonprofit. And we thought it was only going to be, you know, 3 or 4 horses. And we've had as many as 13 or 14 at once, which is too many for our model. But we've been able to genuinely save lives, which is huge. And, you know, sometimes it's incredibly frustrating. Sometimes it really kind of gets you down, especially when you see the ones that you can't help at that moment and you need to prioritize the ones that you can assist. And for instance, Mint, who came from Puerto Rico, he needed a extensive surgery, and we were able to get that done with Dr. Patty Hogan, and she was incredibly generous and did it pro bono for us and allowed us to fundraise so that we could help the next horse. And so, you know, these are the kinds of things that it's just so rewarding, and we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't a family affair. And so I'm really thankful for their support and that we all really step up every day to make it happen.
No, that's a fact. I've been following the Mints, the recovery. Your moms are doing great, posting about that, saw all that. And I was wondering about that because obviously that had to be a very expensive surgery if you didn't get it hooked up. That's awesome.
Oh, you're on mute, Mike. You went on mute for a second.
Oh, yeah. And it's good that the equine vets are doing it. That's good stuff. Sorry if you didn't hear that part.
Thank you. Yes, we're very grateful.
Well, wrapping up the interview is there anything that you have for advice for anyone really going into racing and just kind of getting to know their stuff? Is there any recommendations that you think are tools best to learn?
Well, somebody told me right at the very beginning when I was first getting involved in the industry, said, don't ever rest on your laurels. Don't ever come to the racetrack without being over prepared. And I think that that's one of the things that I've really held true to myself throughout my career is that, you know, there'll be people that work as hard as me, but nobody's going to work harder than I do. Nobody's more prepared. And I take that very seriously. You know, I spend a lot of time in whichever role that I'm doing. I spend a lot of work. I put my heart and soul into it. And I think that that's a big part of it as well. I also think a positive attitude is such a huge thing to not ever be entitled. I think that, you know, throughout what I've done, I've always been really open to doing pretty much anything that needs to be done. And so I've ended up doing some things that I never anticipated, but because of that, I have been given back more opportunities in response. So, you know, you have to pay your dues, you have to prove yourself, but it's one of those things. It's a game that you never stop learning and that you never stop growing. And I think as long as you kind of keep that in the back of your mind, you'll be able to move forward and people will take notice. And it's one of those things that you have to remember that it's all about the horse at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to predict which horse is going to run in an oval the fastest. So I think perspective is an important piece of it as well.
That is facts, facts, facts. We appreciate it again. Acacia Clement for coming on and joining us. Support the racing for home with their family. They do great things. It's all to protect these horses as long as they can after they're done racing, because we all cheer for them when they're rolling. So got to help them when they're done also. So once again, thank you for coming on. We're huge fans of you guys. And yeah, have a great weekend, and good luck with the Belmont at the Big A. And we are back. Great interview there, huh? Mute.
That's the first time I've done that.
We
Yes.
both have a mute this week.
This seems to be a theme. Let's hope it ends this week. Yeah, you learn so many different ideas of handicapping, and then kind of that visual handicapping and looking at that horse. And we also learn about the nonprofit Racing for Home that her and her mother, put their heart and soul into. So it's all around, she's doing so many great things.
Good stuff. Thank you again, Acacia Clement, for coming on the show. And let's hop in and keep this horse deep going. Breeders' Cup Horse of the Week theme this week. We got special one here. Oh, who we got, Mary?
Yeah, Sarah Horse Girl on Twitter, sent this over, posted this, and this is going to Vegas. And going to Vegas will be going to Keeneland.
Yeah, going to Keeneland for the Breeders' Cup horse. Definitely watch out. This horse is sneaky. I'll be looking at this horse and seeing those odds on the day. I might get some good value with this. I think this horse might be live.
Well, actually. I mean, look at this horse's blaze. I mean, it kind of looks like the puff of smoke and everything. That's
I love it, isn't that? And it's going to Vegas, my second home. Love Viva, you know that. Thank you, and it's from My Horse Racing too. So thank you for that, Sarah. And yeah, it's good stuff for those guys. We all appreciate it. Love all that stuff. And let's get into this. 3 in a row, guys. Let's get it here. Play of the day. Gulfstream. I'm back. 100% all Gulfstream. Every she's Gulfstream from here on out for a minute. And, we're heating up here a little bit. 3rd one in a row coming. We're going race 4. And, of course, I'd go to a horse that's never ran before for the streak here on the line. And here's this race. Wait till you look it on the form. I'm going against a Pletcher, a Safi, and a Rohan in this maiden race. It's a very difficult field, but I don't like Safi first-timers. I like Safi second time out. It's one of my things with Safi. Of course, he can do it, but I'm a Safi second time out, and I'm a second time out with Rohan. Also, I'm not a fan of him with his first-time starters at Gulfstream. And the Pletcher horse that's coming down has already ran twice, and it was $500,000 or $600,000 horse that I think doesn't have the goods. It's at Gulfstream now. Pletcher doesn't have a ton running through Gulfstream. Think he's just trying to drop it down to a level he thinks can win. But I like this horse here. We're going with She's a Joy, the 10 horse with Spats here. Bridgemon. Look at that. Maiden special weights, 36%. The trainer hits at 19% with first-time starters. Love the steady work path. Looked like it's just found it. The trainer saw what he liked. You got those just not a lot and not too few and not too many there for the 10. Let's get She's a Joy home here to wrap that up here for today. So that's a tough year of that field. Safi, Pletcher, Rohan. Rohan's winning at about 20%. Safi always wins the belt, and Pletcher's Pletcher. So that's going to be a great race. Let's go with the 10. Maybe I'm thinking 5-1. Will the streak stay alive?
Let's make it happen.
Let's make it happen. Hey, wrapping this up. Thanks again. Love and the support for everyone that's given us. We also appreciate all the guests that's come on. We enjoy this so much. We get random DMs from people, random messages. People love this stuff. We're just trying to keep it moving. We'll get better. We got more stuff cooking too. We got an intro being made. Stuff's cooking in the kitchen. And let's have a great weekend firing at Keeneland or wherever you're at. And let's get those tickets, homes, and cash. Smoke.
See ya.